Okay, this is a review for the Yinyoo HQ12. This is a 12 balanced armature Chi-Fi IM. Sometimes the videos that I do are more interesting to myself than other ones. Some I do because stuff is sent to me, others I do because they're interesting. Is slapping 12 drivers into a shell, a big shell, an effective way to improve sound quality? And I think the answer is no. If you are going to use a crossover system that is going to give specific control to certain drivers, something like Empire ears, they charge way too much money for their goods, so I'm not advocating the prices of the crazy expensive stuff. But the technology in some of them, including the Empire ears Legend X, is effective for using multiple drivers. Having a passive crossover system like this, by changing the position of the balanced armatures pretty much, and also the type of balanced armature is supposed to take care of a certain range. Is there a difference between 6 and 12? Not that I could hear. So if you're ever wondering and didn't think it made sense, you were correct. It doesn't really make any difference. If somebody had 6BA or 12 in an identical shell, I don't think that they could tell. Matter of fact, I'm sure they couldn't beyond luck. Statistically, you can't tell. If I had a set like this that had some dip switches, like the LZ Big Dipper, like the Tansio Mirai has 3, and it clearly changes. I will graph that out. If this had a dip switch system where you could select or deselect certain drivers to create a different sound, that would be a good use of 12 drivers, but this doesn't seem to be it. The build is quite large too. I'm not actually zoomed, but I'm holding it right up to the camera. So if you think that looks like a fatty, it is a fatty. This is quite big, which wouldn't be a problem itself, but I'll get to the sound in a second. The way that this is designed, that really big body, the Campfire Audio Solaris has the main body, the mold, actually starts to come up, like maybe almost this far. And that's the end of the body. And then on top of that goes the tip. So a big bodied like the Solaris, you can get a fit because it's tapered at the end, and plus it's got the nozzle on that. So you've got more room to work with. This is a tough fit. So you got a bunch of BAs that are not really tuned, and you've also got a fit that's kind of hard, and it's in the hundreds of dollars. Is this better than the DM6? No. Is it better than the Tansio Mirai? No. Is it better than the Canas Pro? No. Why is that a big deal? Because those are all about $200. There's no improvement with this set. I'm sure they're thrilled to hear this. Who really cares? You guys know my library. Let me see if I get it. There we focus in. What I listen to for this set in particular, I'm going to go ahead into playlist. Notice that it's at 58 right now. I'm starting to think if I have an issue with the battery on this thing or not. If anybody notices that, check it just for the end, because I know I'll forget. But it was 60 when I started, and it's 58 right now. Playlist. I only got one. Let's start with Freebird, Lynyrd Skynyrd. One More from the Road. This is the live versions. This is the most classic, probably the radio one that people hear the most. There's some micro details at the beginning going on. The pew pew pew, like supposed to be like birds or something. This doesn't sound like it's got a hot treble. We're gonna measure it at the end, but I haven't seen it yet. But it doesn't sound like it's got a lot of peaks in the treble. It's certainly not at 8K above 4K. Like 8K is higher than 4K. I wouldn't think that that's what is going on with this, because some of those notes sound more present. I'll give you an example while I'm talking to you. The Fido, I think it's called, A83, has a response where it's got a big spike at 10, and it's got a huge stage. It's like a proof of point of the psychoacoustic rule that 10K will give a sense of air. The A83s that's their main thing. nothing else. That's it. So because that part of the like birds fine doesn't sound too rough like it can, I would say that there's not a peak at 8K. Treble is not offensive. There is nothing about the treble. It doesn't sound too rolled off. It doesn't sound airy though. So again, 10K probably not a spike. Song sounds okay, but this is a live recording, and it sounds like a studio recording. So this is not presenting with a large stage. Getting all of these drivers together is not doing anything as far as making it sound like it's like the X1000 actually has a small vent on the back. IEMs that have open back or some kind of breathe usually allow for tricking the mind a little better than stuff that's completely closed like this one is. So stages wouldn't be one of the main points of this set, or better points anyway. On the Run, this is another one checking left right pans. In my head, nothing. This would be something that's very similar to a lot of what I. How would this be versus the EX1000? This certainly wouldn't have any stage like this. Versus something like the DM6 wouldn't have stage like that. I'm trying to think of something that sounds like this. God. The set that I just reviewed, the 10 Hz T5, doesn't sound really much different. And I was actually comparing the bodies. I did another video that I deleted because at the very end the phone rang. Video stuff. Turn the phone off first. It rang at the very end. But I was comparing it with the 10 Hz T5 in the video, and switching an ABN, and it wasn't really. There's no difference. So I'm 7 minutes in, only 2 songs deep. Nothing's going on great. Foreplay long time, another thing that's giving me a big sense of space. Lots of details. Nothing special. It's a decent playback, not that great. Since I've Been Loving You, bam, 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 Jimmy Page, Jump On 'Em, dun, dun. And that's John Paul Jones playing on like an organ. It's not a bass guitar, though he's the bassist. He's playing like an organ kind of. And then Robert Plant comes in at his own. So 4 members of a group coming in one by one. Sounds very average on this. There's no real emotion with Robert Plant's voice. There's no particular oomph or impact with the drums. The bass sounds full is the term to use. It's in every song. Maybe a little bit too much. I love bass, and the BA bass is not out of control, but it can sound like a horn, which is what it is actually. And that's really not a good thing. It should sound like a driver, and this sounds like a horn sometimes in the bass. I'm not actually sure why. This would be a song where I kind of hear that when John Paul Jones is doing the hun 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 hun, and that's actually like an organ right there. It's got a less than stellar playback of that. Blister in the Sun. I don't know if you guys know Violent Femmes. Let me go on like a blister in the dun 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 dun. This is awesome. This actually sounded pretty decent and lively on this set, but again, we're talking about 12 BAs versus, let's say, 5, and the 10 Hz T5, and this was one of the tracks that I did in the video that I did that the phone rang. No difference. So the 10 Hz, however much those are, and I actually don't wreck those, sounds about the same as these do. So the bass is always present. I'm not sure what's up with that. One point to make. This track right here, All About You, by Tupac. There's a ton of little stuff going on in the song. There's he's he's got the Outlaws yakking in the background. He's got Snoop Dogg. There's all kinds of studio stuff going on in this mix. And this is not playing it back like I'm used to recently because of the Canas Pro, because of the DM6, because of the Tansio Mirai. I got kind of raised up my level of expectations of Chi-Fi goods, and this is Chi-Fi and it's 12 BAs, so measuring up against those $200 sets, this isn't doing it. And that's just the way that I see it. So do I wreck the set? No. Is it true that just sticking a bunch of BAs doesn't really have any benefit unless they're attached to some kind of a crossover network or selectable way to select drivers, turn drivers off, reconfigure, and change the signature? That would be interesting use of all these drivers, but just putting them in a single shell doesn't seem to really be working. So I suspected, but if I was happily surprised, I got a free set and I'd wreck it, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you think it's something you want to get. I suspected otherwise, though, and it turns out that it's pretty much what I thought it was, which is just driver stuffing, pretty much. Get a measure. I haven't seen this. I haven't done this. If you can't see these, I apologize. I did dark mode yesterday, and that just doesn't work out. Okay, 124. I've got the IM right here. It's got a good seal. Using pink noise. Generator's on. Reset. It's already reset. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and we'll see what we get. I can talk while this is doing this because there is no... Oh, it doesn't pick it up. It's got a full seal. We got a good example. All of these videos should have something more than just what the IEM is showing you. This would be a good example of bass bleed. And also rolled off sub bass. You can see right here we're 63. And that's quite a drop. That's going all the way down. This is rolled off sub bass. Sub bass would be 60 hertz and below, which is pretty much this line, and falling off would be rolled off. So this is actually rolled off sub bass. Didn't notice it that much, so wouldn't it be a problem that I would pick out unless I was focusing on like a bass set? But as regular playback, this doesn't seem to be an issue. But in case you're wondering what sub bass roll off looks like, that's what it looks like. What bass bleed looks like, so we got a double kill here. One, this is not great, not optimal anyway. You'd like something a little more steady. If you've seen the Harman target curve, people are talking about that shit all the time. I'm going to talk about it because I'm doing graphs. If I'm not mistaken, because I haven't really looked at it in a while, I think they got the bass just kind of falling down. It's actually elevated as it comes into what is the audible, which isn't really 20, it's more 30. In a practical way, 30 hertz. And I believe it's coming into a sweep before it goes up around 2 or 3 and then has kind of a plateau before it falls off. It's like this area would be steady, and actually there would be like this. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So the ideal to the human ear would be the opposite of what this is. It would be like a dropping scale until it hit what is basically a compensation curve for the human ear, because it's kind of like this thing flipped over. There's a cavity around 4K to the human ear, the way it perceives sound. So if you flip this upside down, it would almost be kind of like that. But this is an example of sub-bass roll-off and of the bass going all the way out. Remember, the fundamentals right here, 330. So that's about where the bass ends, but we keep going. And then our mid section, which is starting over here, it's forward because the bass is lifting it up. So if you're wondering what forward mids are, that's what this is as well. That's not too far down relative to the bass, but a good half of it is being lifted up by the bass. So that would be called forward mids. The vocals didn't sound like it because of the harmonic of vocals that actually would be elsewhere. But forward vocals, part of it, the fundamental voice goes all the way down to the bass down here, is caused partly by this. And this is called, usually in headphones they say bass bleed. I don't hear people with IMs talking about that much. But this would be the bass literally bleeding into the mids, because that's not a bad point, actually, but it's a little bit high relative to the bass. And the mids got no room, actually, according to this graph. Highest point is 5, 6, around 6K right here. Highest point is equal to the highest point in the bass, which would also be called a V. So we got sub-bass roll-off, we've got bass bleed, and we've got a V, pretty much. That is not a W, because it looks like a W. W sounds like the vocals are... W is not a graph, it's a sound profile. And W is when the drum, the kick drum, and the bass sounds very present. Information in the treble sounds very present, too much for people, and yet the vocals in the middle are like right on your lap. That's more of the harmonic of the voice that is coming up to you, so it's not really a W on your screen. That looks kind of like a W, but this is not a W in its playback. The vocals are not on my lap, like on the FH5s. So is it worth it? No, I said that already. Its fit is not that great. I'm not bashing the set. I think I've been very polite. If this set had some kind of a way to select with dip switches configurations where I could take advantage of these multiple drivers and do something like have a bass profile, like the Tansio. That's not even really bassy. I'll show it on the graph. You know, up, down, down, or if I switched it, maybe I could reflect it on this with all these drivers, but I can't because I'm not doing anything except for doubling 6 drivers and not really doing anything with the extra drivers via complicated crossover or dip switch driver configuration setup. So wouldn't wreck the set, of course. And graph is not the disaster that I just described. That's really not bad, but I'm pointing out stuff because the last time I talked about what does dark mean? Well, that was a good example because the bass was high and everything, the treble was falling off. That's what dark means. What is sub-bass roll-off? That's what it is. That's 60. That's the point of sub-bass and below. And it's falling off. That is literally sub-bass roll-off. What is bass bleeding? It's when bass bleeds into the mids. This is where bass ends, right about here. This is mids. And the bass is bleeding into the mids. That's what that looks like. And that's about it. Not a terrible graph. It gave me a good time to say 3 things. Yeah, pass. And I have actually graphed the CTZ, and it's going to be a really interesting thing to look at. And I won't say more than that. And I'm out. So of course you don't see a check mark. I don't wreck this. Where's my battery? I just remembered that by myself. I'm at 54, so I've dropped 4 since 18 minutes, and I'm just playing music. That seems kind of fast. It's always something. Oh well, I'll figure that out. And I'm out. Live on stage for hoes yelling my name. To be precise, ripping mics is the